These are our new normal now, and I just wanted to give a few tips and tricks on wearing makeup underneath your masks and how to make it last and things like that. There are so many different scenarios for wearing a mask. You may have to wear them for work now, you may be taking them on and off during the day if you're going in shops or if you're on public transport and things like that. So from a makeup artist's point of view, when I'm working on clients, I've also got to take into consideration that they may also have to take a mask with them and take a mask on and off during the day. So whether you are wearing your day-to-day makeup underneath a mask or whether it may be a little bit more glam, these tips are definitely going to help you guys out. So I'm going to do a long wearing base routine today and just show you my tips and my tricks on how to make your makeup last. So the first thing that I'm going to see is where the mask is going to be touching my face the most, and I think the nose area, hopefully you can hear me with this on. So the nose area I think is one of the hardest places because my nose always ends up transferring and rubbing off during the day. So that's an area that we need to concentrate on. So we've got the nose area, so all around the perimeter of the mask really, so around the under eyes here and then around the sides and then underneath a little bit, but I don't really wear too much makeup just underneath there, so I'm not really too worried about that area. So we know the areas that we want to concentrate on. Another thing is it does get quite hot underneath your mask, especially when you're wearing it for a long time. So this makeup has got to be transfer proof and heat proof as well. We don't want to be getting too sweaty underneath our mask. So to make your base really long lasting, it's all about how you prep the skin and how you apply your base products. So I have just moisturised, but even though I am quite dry, I have found under my mask I need to go a little bit more to the matte side. That does help it not transfer and it makes it last a lot longer. So I have been switching up a few things. So I put my moisturiser on already. I want it to be tacky, but I don't want it to be too tacky because the more dewy it is, the more chance it's got that it's going to be rubbing off on something or it's going to be moving around. So I put my moisturiser on while I did my eyes, and next I'm going to apply a little bit of a primer just to tone this down a little bit. I don't always use a primer because I do like a more of a dewy effect, but if I'm going on a night out, or in this case if I want a little bit more of a matte makeup, I do like to use a primer. It doesn't dry me out too much and it just kind of smooths everything over. So this is the Fenty Beauty the Pro Filter Primer, and I just use like half a pump, mainly to here and then a little bit on my chin as well, because this is where we want nothing to be rubbing away. This is the area where our mask is going to be. Usually I would just use a moisturiser and I would be fine, but just to tone the tackiness of the moisturiser down just a little bit, just so it doesn't get too sort of dewy throughout the day, this just helps me out a little bit. It's finding just the right balance of products. I think when it comes to something like this, it's definitely a lot of trial and error. So I'm going to go for quite a full coverage base today, but if you're using this video for like a natural makeup, medium coverage, like your day-to-day makeup, then you can still definitely use these tips. It doesn't really matter like the coverage that you go for, it's more to do with how you apply it and the products that you're using more than anything else. So for foundation today, I'm going to use the MAC Studio Fix because this isn't too matte on me and it's also not too dewy either. So this is like a nice in-between for me. So for foundation, either whether you are wearing it more natural or more full coverage, you want to try and get sort of the coverage that you want using as least amount of product as possible, because especially if you're going for more of a full coverage, the more product that you're putting on your face, the more it's going to have chance of moving around. So how I will do that is I will layer my foundation. Even if you're not wearing a mask, this is what I always do. So I apply a thin layer first. Using a beauty blender to press mine in, I'm starting with a really thin layer, and whether you're using a brush or a sponge, you really want to concentrate on pushing the foundation into the skin. I feel like applying the foundation is like the most important because this is what's covering like the whole of your face. So the more time you spend pushing this into the skin, one, you can build up the coverage without it looking cakey, and two, the foundation isn't just sitting on top of the skin. That way it's going to really move around. So this is a very sheer coverage. This is like a tinted moisturiser type coverage. But if I just went straight in and applied like loads of foundation, it'd take me ages to press it in and it just wouldn't apply the same. It would just sit on top, it wouldn't be pushed into the skin, and then later on when you're wearing your mask and it gets hot underneath that mask, it's going to start moving around. So this layer is going to build it up to more of a medium coverage. If you're using a brush at this stage, instead of sort of buffing the foundation in, try and sort of press it in rather than buff it about, and that way you'll find it builds up the coverage a lot easier. Okay, so more of a medium coverage now. I'm going to build this up just a little bit more, but I'm going to concentrate on areas which actually need it rather than just going straight over the whole face again. So I'm going to leave like my nose area and underneath here because I'll be bringing my concealer in those areas anyway. So it's mainly sort of around here, like the bottoms of my cheeks and my chin area, because I don't always apply concealer to my chin. Remember to go over your ears as well. Then I'm just sort of bringing a little bit down onto my neck, making sure it's all blended. And then I could just do with a little bit on my forehead. I could spend like hours doing foundation because the more you press it in, the longer it's going to last. So just take your time with it. Even if it's just your day-to-day foundation, the longer that you spend on it, the longer it will last. So just try and just really push it in because it will help, especially underneath your mask. For concealer, I'm using the Makeup Revolution, what I always use in C6 I'm using today, not C5. I'm not too worried about the concealer that much, about applying it, because I'm only popping a little bit of this underneath my eyes. I think my mask is going to come to about there, so I'm not overlapping sort of too much. And then I am just going to apply a little bit to my nose as well. I think with the nose area, you've just got to apply the least amount of product as you possibly can because it is going to transfer and rub a little bit there anyway, it's inevitable. The less product you've got there, the less chance that you've got of it all moving around. But again, spend your time pressing the makeup in. And with my concealer, again, I'm just going to just spend a little bit of time blending it in, and then I'm going to bring it down just to where it meets the foundation. I'm going to try and not overlap too much because here in this area anyway is full coverage now, so I don't really need to apply like concealer over the top. Okay, so I've built up a nice full coverage. I'm going to contour next. So I'm going to use all my cream products first before I use any powders. I'm not too worried about my contour because it kind of comes in between like the strings on my mask. So I am going to apply this in the exact same way as I usually would. And then I'm just going to lightly buff that in with a Real Techniques buffing brush. I'm just going to comb through my contour, and then I do like to blend it up a little bit onto my cheeks. Try to be light-handed with this because we don't really want any of the foundation or anything to start moving around. So I'm just going in with a really light hand. You could again just use your beauty blender to blend it out, but I just find it's easier with a contour brush. Okay, then I'm going to go back in with my beauty blender again, just press it all over because we want everything to be blended, but we also want everything to be pushed into the skin, so that is key. If this was a makeup I was wearing all day, I would be able to just set like the centre of my face with some powder and I would just leave the rest, just apply my bronzer and things. But I find with a mask, I do have to set my makeup a little bit differently. So I'm going to start, as usual, with the centre of my face because I am going to be baking a little bit. So if you like to bake, try and make sure that you set everywhere first and then bake because it works a lot better. So I'm using my Laura Mercier translucent powder, just taking a little bit on my sponge, literally just to set. So I'm going to start with my under eyes because they are always creasing anyway, so that's where I'm going to start creasing first. And then I'll do a little bit on my chin, again just enough to set it, not too worried about anything else. And then a little bit on my nose and on my forehead. So now I'm going to bake so I can leave a little bit of powder on for a little bit longer. I'm going to bake in those areas that I've just set with the powder. So these areas here are where our masks are definitely touching our skin, so I want to bake there. The foundation is just going to suck in as much powder as it can and just like set itself in place. And then I'm going to bake on my chin area as well. So on the chin, the mask might not actually be touching my skin, but it is going to get quite hot under there, so we want to make sure that we've got enough powder down for the foundation to keep working with that powder throughout the day, and it's not going to get oily or anything. I'm not going to bake my forehead because that powder is enough for me. I'm not going to have anything on that area, so that will be fine. And then I'm going to bake over my nose as well. So while that is sitting there and doing its business, I'm going to set the outer perimeter of the face. So I'm going to concentrate this like on the outer perimeter. So for that I'm going to use like a coloured powder. So this is the Ultra Definition Loose Finishing Powder from Urban Decay. I'm using the shade Light Medium. Could use like a pressed finishing powder, something like the Charlotte Tilbury pressed powders, or the MAC Mineralized Skin Finishes, they're good as well. So this is like a loose powder, but it's not a translucent powder, it's got a slight colour to it, so it will give on the slightest a little bit more coverage, but I prefer to use something like this on the outer perimeters rather than a translucent powder. So I'm just taking like a big sort of buffer brush. I'm going to press it on first rather than buff it about because I want to take the tackiness away. If I just went in and started buffing this all over, it'd probably just bring up all my foundation underneath. So I'm going to press this in first. If you are not wearing as much coverage as I am wearing, I would just do light powder and not bake. I was wearing like a sheer to medium coverage everyday foundation. I'd set with these powders, but I wouldn't bake. I'd skip the baking part because I just wouldn't need it because I am more dry. And now I can take a little fluffy brush and just wipe away the bake because I have more dry skin, so I don't need to leave my bake on for that long. If you are more oily, you may want to leave it on a little bit longer, especially like in this nose area. So moving on to bronzer, I'm going to apply this as I usually would. This is the Makeup Revolution bronzer. I am going to tap it on rather than buff it about because I don't want the risk of anything lifting up. Usually the bronzer and my blush and things like that would be enough to set my foundation, but if I'm wearing a mask, I feel like I just need that little bit of extra powder just to help me throughout the day. So if you're doing like your everyday makeup or more of like a natural makeup, do exactly the same steps but just with less product and it will work just the same. I've been trying to wear just a tinted moisturiser on its own because that's what I wear a lot of the times like during the day, but with my mask I have to wear like a bit of powder with it as well. It didn't work out very well, just the tinted moisturiser. So I'm just going to use a little bit of blush. I'm just going to use that one. This is from the Lace Palette by Sleek. And then for highlighter, I need to add a little bit of glow back. I'm going to use Champagne Pop today from Becca. So next I'm just going to quickly do my lips, and I'm more of a matte person anyway when it comes to lips, but I have found that glosses can be a little bit sticky underneath the mask. I have been finding more matte lipsticks or even just like a lip balm which isn't too glossy works fine under the mask. So I'm going to use, is this Spice from MAC. Okay, and then for my lipstick, I'm going to use this matte liquid lip. This is from Beauty Boulevard in the shade Remedy. Okay, then my very final tip or trick is a setting spray. I don't usually use a setting spray unless I was going on a night out, but the Urban Decay All Nighter is just such an amazing product. My makeup doesn't budge when I wear this. So this is the All Nighter, and I'm going to give it a bit of a shake, and then I'm going to spray it all over. A good amount. and then you want to waft it dry, so you want it to dry straight away. This is just going to lock everything in place, so even if you haven't done as much makeup as I've done, a setting spray is going to really help. I have seen, I think on TikTok or something, that people have like sprayed the inside of their mask with the setting spray and it stops your makeup transferring, which I'm yet to try. I'd be intrigued if any of you guys have tried it, then let me know. Okay guys, so that completes my long lasting base routine. This base routine is going to help make your makeup last underneath your mask. I really hope you enjoyed today's video, and please let me know if these tips and tricks help you guys out. Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. I really did hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe if you did as well, and I will see you next week in my next one. Bye!